Hello, everyone. Welcome to We Do Better News. Tonight, we're going to be talking about cleaning up plastic in the ocean, the private prison business, autism in the workplace, and then we'll be having a special guest to come on and talk about addiction and recovery. My name is Rick Rifkin. I'm your host tonight, coming to you live this evening from Austin, Texas. Thank you so much for being on the show and watching us. Let's get started. Ocean Voyages Institute has been around for 34 years, and they recently went on an expedition to collect 40 tons of plastic waste and nets, particularly fishing nets, commercial fishing nets from the Pacific Ocean. Where they went was the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. As you can see in this photo, picture some garbage. Now, what the garbage patch is in between, particularly in between Hawaii and California, the ocean currents have created this sort of circle in which plastic has accumulated, and in some cases accumulates several feet deep in the ocean for several mile stretches. And the current estimates on how much plastic goes into our oceans, approximately 9 million tons of plastic waste, including bottles, bags, toys, and other items, flow into the ocean from beaches, rivers, and creeks. And included in that are 600,000 to 800,000 metric tons of fishing gear. Fishing gear that's been abandoned or lost during storms when boats are out at sea fishing. And that's what, I'll go back to the photo, what Ocean Voyages Institute was working on. And all that's going to be in our show notes. You can check out Ocean Voyages Institute's research. Their research is what gave us statistics for this show. And it's really important this work's being done because these nets and debris that accumulate do have an impact on the food chain, which has an impact on us, and it has an impact on the ecosystems as a whole. Let's talk private prisons. Bank of America recently dropped Caliburn Group from its client list. Now, in the past few weeks, there's been a lot of scandal regarding the immigration situation around borders, and in particular, the treatment and detention of minors. And so in Homestead, Florida, a facility operated by Caliburn, while they claim was not an actual detention center, was being used at the very least for temporary housing for minors that had come from the border with their families. And so this comes as part of a trend that we've seen in the banking community. JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo recently dropped the GEO Group and Core Civic. So GEO and Core Civic are two publicly traded firms that operate several federal and state detention facilities and prisons. And so they supply the real estate and a lot of the staffing. Of course, some of that staffing is done directly by the government, but they do supply the staffing and the services as well. And it's really important to notice that since these are real estate heavy companies, banking is a key part of their business model. And if the banks decide not to lend to them, their funding and their whole business model could easily collapse if enough banks say no to them. So it's really important that these corporations are deciding to take the side of an advocate and to really stand for what they believe is right. And what we do find in this is that the corporations, in this case, have actually been more accountable than the government in terms of following through on their word. Tech giant SAP has led the way in hiring people with autism. Now, this comes to us through several reports from Triple Pundit. Go to triplepundit.com. We've got a link in our show notes. Triple Pundit has done a several part piece on autism in the workplace. And what a lot of people don't know is that about 90% of people who are on the autism spectrum disorder, on the spectrum, right, have trouble getting a job or finding a job that works for them. So they're either underemployed or they're unemployed. And according to the CDC, about 1 in 59 children have been identified with autism spectrum disorder. Now, what's been great is that companies like SAP, and I'll give you a couple of examples, DXC from Australia, Walgreens has recently recruited and trained people with autism. Home Depot is involved. Microsoft has a pilot program. And SAP in particular now has 160 employees that are on the spectrum. And they've found that it's actually been to their benefit, that they've been able to really take advantage of these people's different skill sets. And it's really been couched in this sort of new topic and new discipline, if you would, called neurodiversity, and it really exploring people's different talents with how people naturally, through the natural talents and their natural, you could say, personalities and the way they are, that they contribute differently to companies. And one company in particular called Ultra Testing from New York, they test software system to see how robust they are. And about 75% of their staff are on the autism spectrum. And they've had a fantastic experience with this, and they've had to adjust their culture. But they have been successful with this, and other companies are starting to get on board. Next, we have our special guest, Damien Browning. Damien Browning is the founder and the current director of Steps to Recovery Home. Now, Steps to Recovery is based in Cottonwood, Arizona, and they run a men's sober house and a women's sober house. And Damien has a fantastic story. I think you can hear him already coughing. Damien has a fantastic story about how he started the charity. He started it on credit cards, and what they're able to do today, and what the challenges are, and what the opportunities are in sober living, in recovery. So, Damien.
Yeah.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being on.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about the story behind how you got involved in recovery, for yourself and with helping other people, and then how you started Steps to Recovery.
Okay. Well, Rick, I've been, had a kind of rough childhood. Started reaching out for attention and approval outside of myself when I was real young, and I ended up in active addiction for 19 years. And I got in a bad traffic accident in 2001 where somebody was killed. I was going over the speed limit, and I actually I was going to court for that, and then I got arrested. I started using even more heavily over that, and I got arrested. The last time I had 11 felonies, and they kind of run them all together, and I ended up doing 5 years in prison. And that time gave me some time to think, and I really wanted to change my life. So when I got out of prison in 2008, I just started in a recovery process to figure out, what was going on with me and why I did the things I did, and to try to stay clean. Because getting clean and staying clean for me are two different things. I have to do some work to figure out why I use, because it's not about it's not about what we use. It's about why do we use. So that led me on a process to, extensive self evaluation and recovery. And I met my wife, current wife, and we started talking about, how we could help more people and why people relapsed a lot. And, one of the things we've seen in our community was there wasn't a lot of tools that they were given. There wasn't a lot of, how do I stay clean? How do I live in society? How do I do these things? So we started a program that was based after our own recovery. And in order to do that, we just took 3 credit cards and we just went for it. And in August, that'll be 6 years. And, yeah, it's just blown up since then,
I really appreciate how frank you are about your past and your experiences, Damien. Now, what about your recovery in particular? You said, based on your own recovery, what was it about that you modeled for Steps to Recovery?
Well, really looking at the whole, all the variables. So like, looking at, being able to prioritize things, being able to set boundaries, being able to be a productive member of my family, like be a good parent, be mindful around people, change my behaviors, my outlook, my perception, my attitude, the way I talk, my language. There's just so many variables that go into it, and being able to really look at it and say, okay, is this who I really want to be? Now, and then when we formed the program, we started life coaching every day, and we would talk about those things. We have an hour life coaching session that they go to, and we talk about priorities, goal setting, addiction, insanity, all these other things, boundaries, all these things, meditation that go into, all these variables of why we stay locked in the self-destructive pattern. Gotcha. And another thing, we did was like just being accountable. One of the things is I was on intense probation and parole when I got out, and they had a weekly schedule that I had to fill out. So we have them do a weekly schedule. My wife and I's recovery is pretty much based on 12-step recovery. So we have them go to 12-step meetings, and they have to get a sponsor, and they have to work the steps, and they have to get involved in the program. They have to be of service, and that was another thing, is community service. So every week they have to do service to the community, and that gets them, well, that does a few things. That gets them to start feeling good about themselves because they're helping other people, and it gets them to start reaching out to people that aren't in addiction, people that are helping other people. It opens the, I know for me, when I was in active addiction, all I talked to was other people that are in addiction. So being able to get them involved with other people that aren't in addiction is a very helpful thing.
Got it. So we kind of jumped into what services you guys provide. Now, just to recap, so you talked about, was it daily life coaching, you said, or weekly?
Yeah.
Daily
no, we
coaching,
have daily life coaching sessions.
And daily Alcoholics Anonymous meetings? Or 12-step type meetings?
12-step type meetings. Okay. We go to a different few, but yeah, we take them to 12-step type meetings. There's events on the weekends. We take them camping like 3 times a year. Once a month we go kayaking. Once a month we go segwaying in Sedona. Once a month we do out of Africa. There's yoga. And then, we have some other things we offer, is like we give them 98% of our people come in with no money. So we have a job development program for the first 2 to 8 weeks. If they want, they can buy into a job development program where they work 17 hours a week for us, so they don't get like overwhelmed with their payment, and that pays for them. And then when they're not working, we help them build resumes. We help them do mock interviews. We help them get ready for, to find a career that they want to be in.
Right.
So we give them bus passes, discounted gym memberships.
Right? Huh? So go back a step and talk about the housing that you provide and how many people you have and whatnot.
Well, we have a women's house that holds 9 women. Right now we only have 3. We're kind of, we have a lot of openings. We don't know. The summer months are a little harder, I don't know. I think sometimes with women, sometimes women have a little bit more options, like staying on people's couches or whatever. It's a little bit harder for them. But and our men's house provides 9, but we just bought a bigger facility that's going to hold 14. I have 9 men in my house right now, so it's full, but I have options because I'm getting ready. Actually, we already got the house. The USDA actually loaned us money to buy a 4-plex for our men. So I'm remodeling it right now, and I'm getting ready to move the men over there. So I'm going to have about 5 extra beds for men's too.
Got it. So part of their stay is typically free, or you sort of do a work exchange so that they can cover that payment. And what is the payment once they are able to pay?
Well, the payment's $175 a week, but the work exchange program, if they want it, is only for 2 to 8 weeks. And we reach out to organizations and try to get grant funding for that. Northern Arizona Healthcare Foundation actually gave us a grant to be able to do that for this last year. So right now I'm in the middle of writing grants to try to keep that program going. We do have a resale store. One of our ideas was we started a resale store. So we have a resale store. We have a warehouse, so we're able to give them clothes. And that's another thing. When they move out, we actually give them furniture. We have a financial savings plan where you half their money. And if they graduate our program, I furnished 6 apartments last year from our graduates, which really helps it, because the transition period is hard too. So when they're able to put money in and save money, because it costs a lot of money. That's another issue, is like there's not a lot of housing. First of all, if you have a felony, you might not be able to, people might not even be willing to rent you.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, then you need first and last, and you need your utilities, and you need furniture, and it's a lot.
Co-signers, all that, right. So they've also got you guys got a warehouse and a restore. Got it. And so what do you think what's your assessment of how people are going about recovery and especially when they're offering services.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, what do you think's needed, rather, in dealing with recovery and addiction right now in America?
Well, we need funding. I mean, sober living is a big, like, we're kind of in the middle. I call it a recovery home. It's really just a structured sober living, but there's no funding for it, you know. And we've seen that, you know, addiction is the #1 crisis in America. There's up to 190 people a day dying of an opioid overdose, but that's not even counting the alcohol-related causes, meth overdoses, people getting locked up, neglecting their kids, losing their job. There's so much going on, you know. So it's a huge problem. There's not a lot of people that have these problems don't have money. So, you know, we've seen that there was like really good treatment for you if you had, you know, anywhere from 10 to 50 grand a month. And we wanted to make it to where we could help the people that fell through the cracks. So that's why we started a nonprofit. So we offer about $3,000 to $5,000 worth of services for $700 a month. Plus the people that come in with no money. So that's why we come up with ideas to like put them to work and all these other things that we're putting in there because we're a nonprofit. We're getting people in the community and people to donate and help us out with those things. So I do a lot of fundraisers to do that. When it comes to how people are approaching recovery, I really think it's more of an example thing. One of the reasons our program, we have a 42% success rate. We have over 140 people in the community that are doing amazing. And I think that's because my wife and I, we treat them as family. You know, we've been there, so we know what they're going through. So it's an example-driven program. Like the things that we're having them do, we're doing. And it's also about focusing on why they use, like the behaviors and the attitudes and the perception. Those are huge. Those are huge keys when you're dealing with addiction. Because it's not really about the substance. I mean, you know, if they don't focus on the underlying issues, and the other thing is being a part of. So the support group, I think support groups are really, really helpful because otherwise you're in isolation. You know, they say addiction is separation and isolation. So what people with addiction do is they separate themselves from everybody. Like, oh, he doesn't understand me, or he doesn't care, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it is. Then they're isolated. You know, then they're by themselves, and that's when they use and they do all this self-destructive behavior.
Right. Now, tell us a little, you talked about funding. How is Steps to Recovery Home funded? Is it completely, you have the loan from the USDA coming in, but apart from that, is it completely privately funded?
Yeah, I mean, I do 2 fundraisers. I do a clean and sober concert a year. It's a free concert, and I get people like vendors and people to sponsor it. And, you know, last year we only raised $2,000. The year before it was $7,000. We do a Dinner for Hope, which is an annual fundraiser, which we raise about $9,000 a year on. Some people do tax credits. Here, there's the Arizona tax credit, where we get about $14,000. We get businesses to sponsor us. That's how we're able to do the kayaking and all that. Those are in-kind sponsorships. And then, you know, the resale store helps a little bit. It mainly pays for our staff, though. But it does help because we're able to donate to the community, all the other nonprofits we donate to. We have people that come and their house burnt down, and we're able to help them. We give vouchers to people coming out of jail and out of prison that aren't even in our program. We help them with clothes. So, but yeah, it's all privately. It's all, you know, about fundraising. It's really hard. It's very difficult to stay operating and to have the resources and the staff I need. Our program's so amazing, and there's like other towns that want us to start our program that's based after what we have going on in our curriculum, but I can't do it. I'm still trying to get this one to sustain itself for this community. Then one of the visions is that we want to move forward to be statewide, and we want to start like a program for like women and children. We got a few visions going on. The USDA, they loaned us money. The only thing good about that is we're not going to be paying somebody else's rent. Right. But it's not like money they gave us. It's a loan, so it's still a struggle. You know, we are going for some federal grants. We haven't gotten any yet. I went for 5. I got turned down for all 5 federal grants. It would be different if we were state licensed. There's a lot of money that's getting pushed into the addiction community, but it's all for the places that are already state licensed, like the hospitals. It's all for these places that are already overwhelmed. So, you know, like the hospitals and stuff, that their emergency rooms are overwhelmed with people with addiction and mental health issues. They're getting more money in, but none of that money's going to like the sober living, which is an intricate part of the recovery plan. You know, the recovery plan is like detox, inpatient, sober living, transitional, and then moving on.
Well, we're trying to help people before they get to the hospital, right? That's the whole idea. we're trying to help people before they get to the hospital. That's the whole idea.
Well, and that's another thing. There's so many stigmas. Like July 20th, we're having a Erase the Stigma. It's our 4th annual Erase the Stigma Day, and it's an educational awareness day on addiction and mental health. So one of the stigmas is that people have to hit a bottom to get help with addiction. That's not really true. Everybody comes to us as voluntary. You know, there is help out there, you know, and people don't have to, you know, but they need to feel that they're safe. They need to feel that they're going to a place that understands them. They need to feel that they're going to a place that can really help them.
Right. So we talk about the culture around that. Is there anything unique? You've been in this for years. Your recovery's been, you said 2001 that you went to prison in 2001, came out in 2006 and got clean then. Is that what you said?
Well, I went to prison in 2004 and I got clean in 2006 in prison after using. Yeah, so I'm coming up on 13 years without any kind of mood or mind altering substance. So that's really a big thing for me.
Yeah. Is there anything that you see with those 13 years behind you that's unique in 2019 in approaching this?
Well, there's a lot of people scrambling because their kids everybody's dying. So there's a lot of people scrambling, but they don't really understand the addiction, So there's a lot of harm reduction stuff going on right now, which I think is a piece of it, but it's not the whole solution, And I think there's more. The stigma's going away because people are really getting aware that it has to be something that has to be faced. Our society is dependent on it. Our generations that are coming behind us are dependent on it. And it's getting worse and worse. And personally, I have some opinions, but I think technology is one of the things. Technology is good, but it's also been very bad for us in ways because we get addicted to it.
The separation that you talked about, that might be part of it.
Yeah, I believe so, because then we separate, and then what's real in my heart is that we're all connected. I'm a collaborator. I'm a community guy, so I think everybody's connected. So, and all that other stuff. That what society tells us is how much we make and how fast we can get something, and it's all about that. And that separates us from what's real.
It's a great point. Now,
at the end of the day, we don't take any of that with us, right?
Right. You can't take your iPhone with you.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Every year you get a new iPhone, and it's like, what the, how much waste is out there on that? How much dysfunction? You walk around town, or you go into everybody's on their phone. Even me, I got a big problem with it.
The phone owns you, right?
The phone owns me. I'm tired of it, man. Yeah.
Okay, I've got one more big question for you. So if someone wants to start something like Steps Recovery Home, like you mentioned, there's tons of cities that see the demand for this, tons of places that have demand for this. What would be your advice to someone that wants to start something like this?
Really talk to somebody who has and see what's involved in it, because there's a lot. If you just want a place for people to go, that's a whole different story. But if you want to maximize the success rate, there's a lot that goes into it. So I would say reach out and do a pros and cons, and reach out to places like NAR. NAR is National Association of Recovery Residences, or we're under their umbrella in Arizona as ASRA, Arizona Recovery Housing Association, and they can mentor you and help you to actually put together a good program.
Got it. So go talk to someone who's done it. Talk to NAR. Talk to your state. How do you say that again? The Recovery Residency?
Yeah, well, NAR is the National Association of Recovery Residences.
Recovery Residences. Got it.
Yeah, or they can hit me up. I'll probably tell them not to do it. So I don't know. It's a need. It's a need, but you have to have a passion for it, and you have to be willing. You have to know what you're getting into. And the funding's an issue, because if I had more funding, I can get more staff, and it wouldn't be so hard. But resources are very thin, and they're throwing all this money at the addiction, but it's not leveled out. All the money's going to places that already have money.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, Damien, our time is up. Thank you so much for being on. You told your story, and it's a really unique story, and it's really unique what you guys got going on. And we hope to have you on again. And have a great day. Thanks for being on. Happy July 4th. Hope
Yeah,
you
I
guys
mean,
get
you
to do
got.
something interesting.
I'm really happy that you guys, anytime, I mean, they've already done something on the tax credit too, and hopefully that's, helping some people. But, steps2recoveryhomes.org, you can go on there. There's interviews, there's all kinds of information. And if anybody's willing to help some people in addiction, I'm willing to talk to them and mentor them if I can.
Great. Go to steps2recoveryhomes.org, and we'll have it in the show notes. Thank you so much, Damien.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, that was Damien Browning of Steps to Recovery Homes in Cottonwood, Arizona. Our audience question of the week is, what are other ways of addressing America's opioid epidemic? Drop a comment below. Let us know what you think. If you got any experience with this, we'd love to hear about it. There was an article in The Intercept written by Rachel Cohen titled, "Conservatives are nudging the Supreme Court to dismantle affordable housing policies." I won't get in too much into Rachel Cohen's article itself, but what I want to get into is the policy that is addressed in her article, and that's inclusionary zoning. What is inclusionary zoning? Okay, a basic definition of that would be that there are laws put into city ordinances that require real estate developers to reserve a certain number of units in new housing complexes for tenants or buyers in some cases with modest incomes. So if you got 100 units, 25, let's just say 25 of them have to be affordable housing. So they have to meet some kind of median income affordability bracket. So, this house has to be affordable for someone who makes $50,000 a year, and they could only make such and such amount of payment, or they can only afford such and such mortgage payment. So that's inclusionary zoning, and it's been rolled out in about 886 cities according to a 2016 count. Now, the other thing too is that these policies also sometimes come with a fee associated. For example, in San Jose, California, there's an opt-out fee per unit of $122,000, or a 15% requirement for buildings with over 20 units, right? And now, the intention of these programs is that people have access to affordable housing. Now, the problem is that these policies only are able to target a very small supply of the housing stock. In New York, studies have shown that only about 1.7% of housing that came online actually was affordable housing. So a few thousand units in a city of millions of people hardly puts a dent in the problem. And what actually ends up happening, and studies have shown what happens, is that because the developers have to bear this cost, it acts as a de facto tax on new development. And the people that end up bearing the cost of these programs are either the buyers or renters themselves that are not affordable housing buyers. So everyone else who bought a house at market rate is somehow paying an inflated price. Landowners have to inflate the price or eat the cost. And the builders also are bearing these costs. And it's not apparent that this is really something that we can scale or sustain, and that's better than any other policy, or simply just making zoning laws more relaxed. And, what's really important to get is that there are private solutions to these housing issues. We just had Damien Browning on. They are a housing provider. Steps to Recovery is a housing provider. There are other kinds of group housing for people on low incomes. There are nonprofit developers that operate that create affordable housing, but affordable with a lowercase a, meaning it's just a simple unit. It's not a luxury place. It's small. It's affordable. Maybe the commute's a little longer, but this is a sustainable way to develop property. And for the nonprofit developers, they're obviously not in it for the money. And so they're able to do this sustainably without government funding, but actually give a really good amount of supply. And the other thing too, for example, in New York, is that their inclusionary zoning was tied into what's called the floor area ratio. The floor area ratio basically means you can only build so many square feet on this amount of acreage. So let's say you have 1 acre, and they say you can only build 10 acres worth of square footage. So you can only build 400,000 square feet, so maybe you go up only 20 stories. But if you're in Manhattan, you might need to go up 40 to make it work. And so they've restricted things like that in various cities, and it's important to pay attention when cities have made it difficult to actually build at all and made it more difficult, and to try to remediate that situation with something like inclusionary zoning would be backwards. It would be better to simply get rid of the rule that's not working in the first place and to let people do what they need to do to actually produce affordable housing, reasonable housing. Now, everyone, support the show. Go to wedobetter.org/donate. We appreciate all your donations, and I want to thank our founding donors for the contributions they've already made. And really just tune in again, hit the subscribe button, like, give us a comment, hit the bell so you get notified the next time we have a show. And again, this is brought to you by We Do Better. I'm Rick Rifkin. I'm your host, coming to you live from Austin, Texas. Have a fantastic July 4th. Hope you guys get a long weekend. Hope you guys get to really celebrate and be with your families tomorrow. All right, good night. Thanks for watching.